I'd like to thank you all for coming today. We're here to honor the life of my mom, Edith Wilkins, who lived a long, prosperous 88 years on this earth. My mom was born 1 minute before New Year's, 1 minute before the beginning of the Roaring Twenties, December 31st, 1919. And any of those people that knew my mom know how much she liked a good party and a good time, and we all thought it was very appropriate that her birthday was on New Year's Eve and that she was able to celebrate both of those occasions at the same time. My mom was put up for adoption almost immediately after being born because her mother had limited resources and could only take care of so many of the children. And my mother spent the first 11 years of her life in a children's home and hospital setting, which I think any of you can imagine that any type of institutional setting during the 1920s must have been very difficult for a child to have to survive in. And yet that was where my mother developed so much of her strength and character. And even as she was growing up, helped nurses and staff care for the younger children there at the institution. Her mother came to get her when she was 11 years old, and my mother was, needless to say, thrilled to know that she actually had a family and real parents. And that enthusiasm and joy, unfortunately, was short-lived because her mother's new husband became physically abusive towards my mom, and my mom, being someone that never would stand for such stuff, left home at the early age of 14 and went out to begin taking care of herself and living independently in the world, earning her way by being a live-in domestic worker, cooking and cleaning to earn her room and board. She met my father when she was 24 years old, working as an elevator operator in Boston. They were set up by friends of hers on a date, and it was one of those relationships that was really, truly love at first sight. They got married not too long after that, in early 1945. They moved to Roswell in late 47 when doctors told them that my sister's health was at risk unless they transferred to a drier climate, and because of my father's prevalent asthma conditions, that was beneficial for him as well. So they transferred to the then Walker Air Force Base. They raised 3 children together and were together for 18 years before my father's health took him way too early at age 46, leaving my mother with 2 teenage children and me, an 8-year-old disabled son. I have to say that information on disability was very scarce back in the early 60s when I was a young man, and yet my mom, with no real education or any official knowledge of how to handle things, instinctively, as so many mothers do, knew just what to do and when to do it. And because of her, I am truly the man that I am today. My strength of character, my caring for my fellow man, my ability to express myself, my independence, my humor, all of those things that I get directly from my mom, and I'm very thankful to her for them. And at a time when I could have been tutored and segregated and isolated from other children, my mom simply wouldn't have any part of it and sent me to normal schools the entire 12 years that I went to school. And even today, as an adult, I've encountered so many other people with disabilities who were amazed, even people younger than I am, that I was integrated into a normal school system and that was done way before it was the fashion. But again, my mom did it because she knew it was the right thing to do. She got all 3 of us through high school. We graduated. My brother and sister went on to college, and I'm proud to say that I was the first of her children to graduate from college with a bachelor's degree in 1980. After I moved out of the house, she sold the house we grew up in 1975 and spent the next 15 years working primarily at Rulon's with her best friend until the early 90s when that establishment closed down. And I think that the bulk of the people in the community that know my mom knew her from there, and that's where she earned her nickname Speedy, because she was constantly in motion the entire time she was at work, being the last one there at night and often the first one there in the morning to set up. and certainly did not need to work. My father had provided for her well. She did it because she didn't want to be bored and because she wanted to be with her best friend. And even when we were growing up, she didn't work because she had to. She worked because she wanted to provide those little extra things for her kids that kids even then wanted to have. After Rulon's closed in the early 90s, Mom again could have earned, a well-deserved retirement, and yet chose once again to do one of those things that we all think exemplifies the character and the kind of person that she was. When one of the very first people she worked for as a housekeeper in 1947 called her when she was towards the end of her life and asked my mom to come back and keep house for her and be there with her as a companion, my mom didn't blink an eye. Again, not because she had to, not because she needed the money, but mainly because she wanted to be there for her friend of over 50 years, and indeed was there once a week or more with Mrs. Lackey until she passed away. And even when Mom's eyesight was failing and she could no longer drive herself back and forth to work, the Lackey family was glad, more than glad, to come get Mom and take her back and forth to work because they knew how important that relationship and that friendship was for their mother. There have been people in this life that have taken advantage of my mom's generosity and her kindness, and even done it on more than one occasion. Some of those people have passed on. Some are no doubt here today. I can only say that there's no better example of one of God's angels here on earth than my mom. And I think that anybody who knowingly or repeatedly took advantage of her good nature and generosity will certainly have to answer for that, if not in this life, certainly in the next. But more important than those people, and the people that I do want to acknowledge today, are the people that were there with her during the last days and weeks and months of her life. Those are the people that I want to mention specifically, and that is Billy Ray and Debbie and your family, and Renee and Cheryl and your family, when she needed people to take her to the doctor or bring her food or hold her hand or just make her feel loved and special and important. You were the people that stepped up and gave of your time and of yourselves to be there with her when she needed people the most. And on behalf of myself and my brother, my sister, all of the family, and all of my mom's friends, I can only say thank you so much. And I think I can truly say that when all of us reach the end of our own individual journey in this life, we would all be very well served to have friends like you there with us at the end. There's so many different ways that you can leave a legacy in this world. Some people build things, some people write books, most people leave their legacy through their children and grandchildren. Certainly my mother raised 3 children that all contribute to the world in their own individual way. We hope that her grandchildren and great-grandchildren will also exhibit all the characteristics that made her special. But the one thing I think that we want my mom to be remembered for, and the one legacy that we would want you all to carry forward, is that simple, elegant philosophy that she took through her life. And it was nothing more than, be kind to your fellow man, and your fellow man will be kind to you. She didn't get this from a book, and she didn't get it from Dr. Phil. She got it from living 88 years in a life that was way too often, way too hard. And yet the character and the kindness and the joy and the spirit always prevailed, always rose to the top. And I think if you all look and think in your personal lives, when was the last time that you were in the Walmart or the grocery store or the bank or paying a bill and heard someone say, gosh, we wish you'd come in here more often. You've got such a great attitude. We just love it when you come in here. And yet that happened to my mom all the time. Virtually every time she went out, she had encounters like that. That's what she took out into the world, and that's what she got out of it. And in a world and in a society that is where it's way too often too easy to be cynical and angry and impatient and unhappy, my mom simply wouldn't have it. She knew that she could very easily take that into the world, but that there'd be no benefit from it. And she always benefited from the joy that she brought to the world and got it back in spades. So I think if there's anything that any of us can take with us and apply in the rest of our days in this world, on this planet, I think that my mom would be most happy to know that you took that simple philosophy that she applied every day of her life and that made her the special person that she was, and the person that we're here mourning and remembering and loving today. So again, on behalf of her family, all of her friends, I want to thank all of you for coming today. God bless my mom. God bless our Edith.